Check, 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 check. Check, check, check. Do, 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 do.
Well, hello, everybody. How is everyone doing? I'm so glad you guys are here. We just want to welcome everybody. We're just honored that you guys took time out of your Saturday to come and be a part of this meeting to hear um, what our organization is up to, what we're doing, and then also, we want to see how we can get you to partner with us in different ways. So we'll get into more of that here in a little bit, but I just want to say thank you, River House, Pastor Stacy, leadership. Thank you for letting us have this church for the day to host this venue. Really appreciative to have a church that just supports us unequivocally without any kind of holdback or anything. It's just really nice to have that, and so we're just really thankful for you guys. But I want to pray, just start this meeting off right, because you can't make it official, right, until you pray. So, Lord, we just thank you that you're just amazing. We thank you that you are good. We thank you, Jesus, that your blood is still, it is wet, it is still cleansing, it is still healing, it is still delivering, and it is still powerful. We thank you, Lord. Holy Spirit, we welcome you into our meeting. We ask that you would give us just open ears, open eyes, and an open heart to hear clearly from you, see clearly, know your ways, know your heart. Lord, we just pray your blessing over this meeting, and let us just have a great time just discussing and then just really collaborating in Jesus' name. And everybody said, amen, amen. So real quick, how many of you guys have heard of Five Sparrows before? Show of hands. Okay, good portion. Well, for those who don't know, Five Sparrows used to be a anti-human trafficking organization, really in the crisis phase, but they just kind of filled a huge gap in Cumberland County, and unfortunately, about a year ago, they had to close their doors, which left a huge gap in our community where victims weren't getting the services that they needed. Well, Five Sparrows, my wife was actually a part of Five Sparrows. She was the victim services director for Five Sparrows. So basically the core of what they did, Abby was in control of it. Abby was the one heading all of it up. And I want to brag on my wife real quick. If it deals with anti-human trafficking, any kind of issues like that, law enforcement, the DA, judges, anybody who's anybody actually making an effort to make an impact for human trafficking, they go to her, which is an honor for me. I'm about to cry. I didn't want to tell her I was going to talk about this, but she is that big of a deal. And so though she won't admit it, and though a lot of times doesn't go recognized, she is an incredible woman who many, 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 many people look up to. And so anyways, I wanted to share that. So Abby filled that gap, or she met that need with Five Sparrows. And so when Five Sparrows left, closed their doors, it left a huge gap in our community. And this is where we came in, we prayed, and we just asked God, what do you want us to do? And he told us to pull the trigger and to start Gate Beautiful to fill that gap. And so we're really excited to kind of talk more about what we've been up to, what we're going to do, and how you guys can get partnered into that. And but before we do, and I was going to talk more about that, I want to make just a quick clarification because we've had so many different conversations with so many different people. We're trying to kind of clear up some of the muddy water. So we have launched 2 anti-human trafficking organizations in this past year. So the one you're at today is Gate Beautiful, which is a victim services organization, mainly for adults, but also serves minors as well. But it is a victim services organization to get them where they need to go in that crisis phase. The other organization that we have launched is a residential program for minors, focused on minors. It's called Magnolia Hope. So Gate Beautiful, Magnolia Hope, 2 different organizations. One is us as a family that we've launched as a nonprofit. Magnolia Hope is actually a residential program through Falcon Children's Home. And we work for Falcon Children's Home, and we're the directors of that program. And we can actually answer questions for both of those organizations later on today. So if you have some questions on either one, we'll be glad to meet them. But we definitely want to clear that up because everyone's like, all right, so is this the services one or is this the residential program? And wait, are they the same? And we're like, no, they're different. And So we just want to clear that up and turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for all of those props. Appreciate that. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is going to be a little information dense, but I'm going to try to get through it smoothly without it seeming like too much information. But it is really important to understand human trafficking in Cumberland County to be able to understand what we do and who we are. So before I start, though, I do also want to introduce Shelby. This is Shelby at our table up here. She is actually a survivor, and she's a part of our team. And she is heading up some of our awareness stuff. So if you're interested in fundraising and awareness stuff, Shelby is going to be heading that up for us. So we're very proud of her, very excited to have her today. So, human trafficking in Cumberland County. So most of us are familiar with this definition. The Department of Justice defines human trafficking as a crime that involves exploiting a person for labor, services, or commercial sex. So that's a very vague description. There is a lot of misconception about human trafficking. If you're a Liam Neeson fan, if you've ever seen Taken, it's a great movie, but it doesn't usually look like that. So there's a lot of misconception about what it looks like. Has anyone heard of Polaris Project? Yeah, so Polaris is a great resource. They actually came out with a typology report in 2017 that outlined 25 different types of human trafficking. And so some of these will seem really similar in their names, but the reason they have outlined them as separate forms of trafficking is because the systems within them look different. So this was really a groundbreaking report because it helps people see kind of the way these networks function. So when we think human trafficking, we think somebody pulls up in a van, kidnaps somebody, they're in a hotel room that night. And sometimes that does happen, but it looks so many different ways. So this report is really, really helpful, and it helps identify a lot of different kinds of trafficking. We are sure there are more, but these are the ones that they've identified. So this report is available on our website if you're interested in reading about the different types. So in Cumberland County, of that list, we've almost seen all 25 here in Cumberland County. But the ones that we see the most are escort services, illicit massage businesses, outdoor solicitation, and residential. And you guys are welcome to ask questions. If you have questions, we will have a time at the end for questions too, though. Most of that is self-explanatory. But illicit massage businesses, it actually used to be called illicit massage businesses, but law enforcement has now realized how vast and huge the illicit massage industry is. Now they call it an industry. So that's a lot of these massage parlors that you see that just kind of pop up. A lot of those are actually fronts for trafficking organizations. I'm sorry, I forgot pornography. Okay, so in Cumberland County, we have what's called a task force, human trafficking task force. And Cumberland County is a lot more advanced than a lot of the state. Be proud to be from Cumberland County because they're doing a really good job with human trafficking in general. We have a designated unit at both the Fayetteville PD and the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office for human trafficking. Most counties across the nation use just their special victims units. So they're not specialized, they're not specially trained. So the fact that we have those units is a huge blessing and a major progress. We also have a assistant district attorney who is specifically assigned to human trafficking cases. So she's a huge asset as well. Her name's Lindsay Lane. We work with her a lot. And then also on the task force, we have service providers. So what our task force is, the fact that we even have a task force is great compared to a lot of counties. So the task force works together to attack the whole problem of human trafficking in Cumberland County. So basically, I think we can go to the next. Yeah, so we meet monthly to discuss cases, kind of talk about what the gaps are in the community, what people need to know, if there's a development in a case, different things. So it really keeps everybody on the same page, and it helps Cumberland County do a really good job at serving survivors and prosecuting cases. So the way the task force, practically the way it looks, the way they help, is our service providers, which would be us, other organizations like North Star and Doing It for the Kingdom, and Rape Crisis, Child Advocacy, all of those are service providers that serve victims. So we work for the restoration of the victim. That's our sole priority. It's the reason that we exist. Local law enforcement on the task force is obviously working to charge and investigate the crimes. And then the ADA, which is Lindsay, she works for the prosecution to prosecute the crime. So the purpose is to have a well-rounded approach so that one party is not working really hard and not seeing any breakthrough. Having everybody on the team helps us see things change and happen in Cumberland County. So I put one day we would like outreach for traffickers and buyers that would be through our service providers. And we are actively working on that. So, and I know North Star has a heart for that as well. So that's something we're really working towards to add to the task force. Okay, so who are we? Our mission is to offer a clear path to freedom for men, women, and children caught in human trafficking, prostitution, and addiction. And we provide case management, crisis response, and then long-term planning. And I'll get into what that really means. It's not limited, like I just said, to just victims of human trafficking. We do believe in redemption for every side of this problem. We believe that there is freedom and redemption for buyers and traffickers as well, because we believe that Jesus believes that. So our name. Everybody asks what our name means. In Acts 3, it comes from Acts 3, Peter and John were going into the temple, and there was a man there that was begging. He was lame. He had been lame since birth. And he was sitting at the gate called Beautiful. And he came there every day asking for money. That was just, people carried him there, and that was his daily life. So when Peter got there, he said to the man, "Look at me." And the man looked at him expecting that he was going to hand him money. And Peter said, "Silver or gold I do not have, but what I do have I give you. In the name of Jesus Christ, walk." So we believe in that kind of healing. We believe that the world, so he begged there for about 40 years, and every day he came back. He came back the next day because what he had received the day before were worldly answers, worldly solutions to meet his physical worldly needs. So while we believe deeply that survivors have immediate needs that need to be met, physical needs, we also believe there's a much deeper healing available. And so we hope to offer all of that with Gate Beautiful. Okay, so our values are safety, support, justice, and hope. So safety is really that crisis phase. We're trying to meet those immediate needs, that safe housing, sometimes drug detox, medical care, sometimes legal assistance, whatever those things are that we need to do immediately in those first 72 hours to keep them safe. And then support, we believe in unconditional and constant advocacy. So the average number of times a victim leaves the life and goes back is 7 times before it sticks. So that's a lot. And sometimes as an advocate, that can get daunting and discouraging. Yeah, the average number of times a survivor leaves the life and goes back to a trafficker is 7 times before it sticks and they're truly free. So a lot of times that means you're taking someone to detox so that we can get her into long-term healing. And then on day 3, she decides to go back. And we believe in advocating for her through all of that. We never walk away. We never say, sorry, you've had too many chances. We believe in that support and that support sticking around for when she's ready. Justice. A lot of people are fearful that because we would like to see buyers and traffickers redeemed as well, that we don't believe or advocate for justice. That is not true. We believe in taking responsibility for your actions and for them to be prosecuted, and that in the process of that Jesus can redeem. And hope. So obviously this life is very, very dark, and a lot of times that causes a numbness to set in, especially if women have been in the life for a long time. So one of our biggest priorities is to help cast vision for their future, and just make it clear that all is redeemable, and that we really try to focus on what their dreams were when they were younger. What did you want to be? What do you a lot of them don't even know how to dream anymore. And so we try to help them dream, help them get that back so that they can really have hope for their next steps and walk into healing. Okay, so practically, what do we do? This is what we believe a restoration process looks like. Sometimes it looks a little different, but in general, this is what it looks like. It's a 4-phase process. And like I said, often they come out and they go back in. And so we're starting this process over again. So this process is not usually linear and smooth. So that first phase, we call it the relief phase. It's that first 0 to 72 hours, that crisis phase, where we're helping them detox or getting them to a safe house, buying them clothes, getting them food, all of that kind of stuff. So that's that real crisis phase. And then after that, they move into what we call the stabilization phase. And that's usually 30 to 90 days. 90 is really long. It's not usually that long. It's closer to 30. And that's where they're in a safe house. They're maybe receiving some counseling while we do some long-term planning. Maybe legal assistance. It just kind of depends on what their needs are. So that's that kind of intermittent phase between crisis and long-term. So during that phase, we're helping them plan what they would like for long-term. So we have 2 options. The options are long-term restoration program. So we work with residential programs all over the country that everything is paid for them. They don't have to pay for anything. We'll send them to a long-term restoration program. We send them with an advocate so they're not traveling alone. And those programs are anywhere from 9 to 24 months. It just depends on the program and what the woman needs. So that's one option. Going somewhere, focusing on some trauma-informed therapies, just focusing on healing, job skills training, all kinds of things. The other option is reintegration back into everyday life. So we never, for the most part, recommend that. We just don't see it go well. Usually taking us up on a long-term program is where we see the most success, but every now and then a girl has a lot of support, and so reintegrating makes sense. But usually the reason they would choose to go right back into society once they've gotten out is because they're really just not ready to process through healing. So yeah, that third phase is usually a residential program. It's where they're focusing on healing. We don't do so much of that. We're not a residential program, but we do help them get there. And then once they graduate those programs, they move on to phase 4, unless they've chosen to hop over to that one after phase 2. And they reintegrate back into society. And we're helping them find housing and practical things like that. So we do a lot of case management. We like to consider ourselves an on-ramp to long-term healing. So that long-term phase is that restoration phase, that phase 3. We work primarily in phases 1 and 2 and some in 4. But we like to think of ourselves as kind of clearing the path of obstacles so that they can get to that place where they can heal. So, detoxing and things like that are really important to be able to get to that step. So we serve by having a 24-hour referral hotline that law enforcement can call, women can call, the community can call, and make referrals. We have a 24/7 survivor crisis response team. That's who would respond when we get a call. And that is done through our victim advocate team and our security team. And I pretty much already explained this next point. Yeah, so we help in all the phases, but primarily 1 and 2. And then provide case management in the 4th. Yeah. Okay, so this is a lot. Basically, I'm a systems person, so I like to know how something works. This is how what we do works. You don't have to read all of this, but basically it says when a victim comes into care, when we get a referral from whatever source we get it from, this is how things flow for us. So anything you see in yellow is something a volunteer team does. These are trained volunteers. And so that's going out and doing that crisis response. So you're doing an initial interview with them, an assessment, and this is strictly women on this victim advocate team. You're doing a human trafficking screening, needs assessment, all of that kind of stuff. And that helps us determine if she's ready for change and also if she's a human trafficking victim. Because most of the time we know from the referral, but sometimes we don't. And we have to do some stuff to establish that. And so that helps us determine our next move. If she is in fact a human trafficking victim, we would assign a victim advocate to her case permanently, and we would begin some case management. So we're meeting her needs and assessing if she wants to go on to a restoration program or if she's really wanting to stay local and just receive some local services. So then you see if she decides to go back or to reintegrate into society, then we just provide ongoing case management locally. So we'll help her get in therapy, things like that, but it's really just light case management at that point. If she does want to go on to a full restoration process, there's a couple routes for that as well, because a lot of times we're meeting with them in the detention center. So if we are, we do what's called a flight risk assessment, which helps us determine. Sometimes we work with the ADA a lot to get some charges adjusted for women sometimes. And that would be like if a woman gets arrested and she gets charged with prostitution, but we know she was being trafficked, she wasn't choosing to do this, we can get those charges adjusted so that she doesn't have a prostitution charge and she can get out of jail. So we always do a flight risk assessment if they're in jail, because that helps us determine, do you want help? Are you ready? Or are you just wanting to get out of jail and is this not going to stick? So that's why we do that flight risk assessment. It's really important for us to help us determine where she's at mentally and if she's really ready, because we don't want to set them up for failure. So we coordinate all of that with the ADA and their attorney and identify programs, help them apply, and then we move them to the program. So like I said, that's a lot, but it's helpful to understand kind of what our process looks like. Okay, does every victim want help? The simple answer is no, they do not. So how do we determine that? We do what we call a 3-question test. We don't ask them these questions outright, but we, in our interview, in some form, we get the answer to these questions. So we ask them if they're happy with where their life's at, with where it's headed. Is this what you would choose? Is this what you want? And usually the answer is no. And so once we determine they're not happy with that, they want something to change, then we're asking them in some form if they're ready for help. And if they are ready for help, then we're determining how much help they're ready for. So does that mean you want help getting out, but you would like to stay local? Or does that mean you would like to leave it all and be completely free? It really depends on the situation. But we, in some way, try to get these questions answered so we can establish if she's ready for change. And I say she, we do serve men as well. It's just much more common that our survivors are women. So a lot of people don't understand why someone would not want help. And we've all heard the term, you can lead a deer to water, but you can't make them drink. So we can see what freedom looks like, but trauma changes the human response. And so it's often hard to understand why someone would not want to get out. But trauma changes the way we reason and the way we see life and the way we see our options. And so there's just a variety of different reasons why they would not choose to accept help at a certain time. So like I said before, our goal is to provide an open pathway. That doesn't mean they're always going to walk it, but if we can clear the obstacles, then it's a lot easier for them to accept help. And often that support seems to be the missing link. So having that person that will walk with them unconditionally, consistently, is what we see help lead them into making a decision for freedom. Okay, so how can you get involved? We have a variety of ways to serve. The first is our greatest need, and that is the victim advocate team. And that is for women only. What the victim advocate team does is they do that crisis response. So when we get a referral to our hotline, one of our victim advocates would go and do an initial interview, establish if they're a human trafficking victim, assess what their needs are, and do all of that in an initial interview. And what that really looks like is law enforcement calling the hotline, giving a referral right when they've encountered a woman. So they'll encounter someone, interview her, and once they realize she's a victim, they're calling the hotline. So you're coming in the middle of crisis. She's not been, it hasn't been a couple days. You're coming in like within an hour of her encountering law enforcement or whoever it was that made the referral for her. And then you're providing ongoing support for cases that you've been assigned. The requirements for the victim advocate team are that you be female, and we have a volunteer application and a training, and it says PREA training. So PREA stands for the Prison Rape Elimination Act. Basically, that's the training that the jail requires for you to go back and meet with people. So because a lot of the times the women are in the jail, you have to be PREA certified to be able to do that if we have a survivor that's back there that needs an advocate. And then a background check. And then we have our security team. So the security team would provide security for that crisis response, so that advocate, they would go with that advocate to respond. And their primary goal is security, making sure she feels safe, the survivor feels safe, but keeping their eyes out. They're the driver of the vehicle, and they're just kind of the eyes of the operation. And so they would provide security and transportation for most of those encounters. We don't always have a security person if we're really familiar with the woman later on in the relationship, but initially security would always go. And the requirement for that is application, security training, which we are building. So if that's your expertise, we would love assistance building that training, and then a background check. And then the prevention and awareness team, which is the team that Shelby is leading. And that team would provide trainings and awareness briefs for the community. And then we have a couple that are coming soon. So these teams are not operational. But basically, this is our goal for buyers and traffickers. We would love to have a street outreach team. So that's kind of a prevention team. They're going out and targeting at-risk populations, which really every population is at risk. But we do see more low-income populations being vulnerable. And so we would, as a team decide what neighborhoods to do outreaches in and things like that. But we would love to have a prevention outreach team. And then a buyers and traffickers outreach team, which would be specifically in the detention center, reaching out to those that have been charged with soliciting or trafficking. So there are also a few ways to give. Obviously, financially is always a way to give. Our annual need we have estimated to be about $67,000, which is a big number. We always need commodities. We have these on our website, and we keep it updated to say the things that we currently need. So things like gently used suitcases, toiletry bags we have it listed on there, kind of the things that the women typically need. But that's always something that's really helpful. And then services as well. So we consistently need help with legal services, medical services. So that would be like forming an MOU with us, a partnership with us to provide medical care for our women. A lot of these women are not insured. And so it's very helpful if we have a medical partner, and we have a couple. But if we have a medical partner that we can say, hey, we just had a call. She's going to need to come and get checked out right now. Can you fit us in? And that's really, really helpful. Always mental health, having mental health partners, and then grant writing is a skill that we would love for someone to help us with. And that's all. So, sorry, I know that was a lot. But do you guys have any questions? Oh, we do. Sorry, we should have said this at the beginning. We do have coffee and water over here. It might be cold now. Hopefully not. But you're welcome to grab some. Yeah, the water. Any questions? Okay. Claudia? No, so they leave a voicemail and it transcribes it and sends it immediately to us so we can call them right back. And even if they don't leave a voicemail, which usually they don't, we just call them right back.
Just so everyone can hear the question, but there's some people that could not come and they're watching via live stream, so it'll probably be helpful for them to hear the question as well.
Earlier you were talking about, why some of the reasons why girls don't leave the life, and you mentioned trauma. Could you unpack that in regards to trauma bonding so that people can understand a little bit more of what's going on with the victims, why they won't?
Yeah, so trauma bonding, I don't know how many people are familiar with that, but it's similar or the same thing as the Stockholm Syndrome, where you grow an affection or just, something positive towards the person that's abusing you. So for a lot of these women, it started out as a romantic relationship. And most of the time, he knew what he was doing all along. It didn't just turn into it. But for her, she didn't. So it'll be a romantic relationship. And then, a couple weeks in, he'll say, I've been letting you stay here, or I've been paying for our hotel room every night. I need you to start contributing. And, the job you're working is not enough. So I need you to do this. And usually it takes a day or so for her to, I'm not doing that. And there's kind of a debate. And then because she thought he loved her and he, had provided all these things, and then she does feel kind of guilty because I guess he has been providing for us and I should contribute. She gets guilted into doing that. And then a lot of times drugs are brought in to keep her subdued so that she will continue doing it, or the fact that she did it to begin with, it's held over her head, and he'll tell her family if she doesn't keep doing it. So it usually starts, maybe not, I would say usually with the women that we encounter. Across the board, it is not usually that way. Anyway, so it often starts with a romantic relationship. And so it causes them to be very confused about whether or not they should leave. Am I abandoning him? I do kind of owe him. He has paid me. And a lot of the times there's a lot of different kinds of pimps. A lot of people, what you see in the movies is a gorilla pimp. And that's a pimp that's really aggressive, uses violence to get his victims to cooperate. But then there's also a Romeo pimp. And so that's the pimp we see the most, where it's romantic in nature. And so it's very, very manipulative and very confusing. And once they do try to leave, they felt like they deserved the abuse, or it just becomes a very, very confusing emotional process. So they often don't want to leave.
I know you just said that the human trafficking can concern other areas too. Now we are out in the public, and I know like in restaurants and massage parlors and stuff like that. What are some things we can look for that might give us a clue that this person is there against their will? And if we feel that, what should we do?
So what to look for? Often it's gonna just look like a traumatized person in general. So someone that it's hard to give real signs because it can look so different depending on how the person is coping with it. But signs that you could look for are someone that looks traumatized, so someone that isn't willing to look you in the eye, someone that it seems like someone else is making decisions for them, like you ask them a question and they kind of wait for someone else to respond. Low and bad hygiene is often a sign. And the difficult thing is these are also signs of other things. So, it could be that she's not being trafficked, but someone that looks like they're being controlled is going to be the biggest thing. But someone that looks like they haven't had enough to eat, or they don't have great clothing options. Maybe she's got a really long t-shirt on and no pants. And it seems, oh, why would you wear that to Walmart? Well, if she's been living in a hotel for a few months, that may just be all she has. So things like that just seem a little off. Those are things that you would look for. But the biggest thing is someone that looks like they're being controlled by somebody else. Someone else is making their decisions. And what you should do, if it seems like the girl is in immediate danger, calling law enforcement. You don't want to walk up to her and get involved because you don't know who's with her, and you don't know if somebody's watching her. But if you have an officer nearby, you can always talk to an officer. You can also call the National Human Trafficking Hotline and make a tip. That number is on our cards, and it's on our website, and it's online. Polaris runs that hotline. But that would be what you would do. You would call law enforcement or the hotline.
How many of the young ladies that you help are pregnant? Does that involve a whole nother screening and process there?
Yeah. We have had a few survivors that are pregnant. It does obviously present a whole new area of care that she needs. So we have certain programs, long-term programs we work with that will take women that are pregnant, or will take women that have children. And it's not common that a woman travels with her children. Usually she needs to get herself healthy first. But every now and then we do have that situation. But pregnancy, presents a whole new slew of care that she needs. We do work with a local gynecologist that has partnered with us, and so she does exams for us and checks their overall health before they would go to a program, and then we have those programs we work with that continue their care from there once they get there. We've also partnered with a mobile ultrasound unit that will come and do ultrasounds if we have someone that's considering abortion. They'll come and do that ultrasound for her, just so she, help her kind of process.
So I know you said you had partnerships with the police department and the DA, and I think that's fantastic to collaborate. I'm just wondering, do you guys mostly get your referrals from the police department, or are you doing outreach in maybe the massage parlors and different things like that?
So right now we're not doing outreach mainly because we don't have the capacity for it. We do get most of our referrals from law enforcement or the attorney's office. We do get some community referrals. But yeah, if we did outreach in the massage parlors are a tricky business as far as outreach goes. But we have brainstormed some ways to do that. Another way is that we've thought about is going to our local motels on 301 and some of those places. But right now we're not doing it because we don't have the capacity to serve them all. So we would love to build our victim advocate team so that we could do that and we would know that we could meet that need. So yeah, outreach in the future for sure.
My question is, you mentioned Safe House, and from my understanding, that's after they're done with crisis care, which they go to Safe House before they go to what's called restoration, where they're going to be in long-term place. As far as Safe House, one of my questions is, are there enough of those? And then my next question is, are there any requirements for Safe House?
So when we say safe house right now, we're talking about an established organization that provides safe housing. So the ones that we work with, we have 2 that we work with right now. Which, to answer the question, no, there's not enough. Safe housing is the biggest gap that we have in Cumberland County. But we use a safe house that's not in Cumberland County for our survivors right now. And most of the time that's ideal anyway to get them out of the city. So these are places that take multiple women. Are you referring to individual houses that will take women? Okay, so I know Five Sparrows, we had and Miss Mary was a volunteer with Five Sparrows. So we had a idea in mind to do safe houses with people in the community where they were specifically trained. I think we were calling it Sparrow's Nest. It never really got off the ground because of capacity. We just didn't have time to do it. But the goal was to have families that were willing to take survivors for a couple nights while we worked on the plan. And they would have training and certain security and all that stuff. So to answer your question, we're not doing that right now. I think that would be great in the future when we have the capacity to do it. But right now we're using organizations that provide safe housing. Yeah.
I knew that that was would last.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. Okay. Did everybody get a info sheet or a sheet to put your name and email and stuff on? If you didn't get a sheet, do you mind raising your hand? And Shelby will come around and make sure you get one. This is just, and you don't have to fill it out, but if you want us to have your name and email so we can send you updates, just make sure you fill that top part out and check that you'd like Gate Beautiful updates, and we'll add you to our email list. Yeah, so she'll pass those out. I guess I can't ask if anyone has questions now.
You all have them.
Does anyone have questions about Magnolia Hope? I know Michael mentioned that, and some of you may not have even known that, so it seems like something completely random, but sure. So Magnolia Hope is, we talked about those 4 phases of healing. Magnolia Hope is a residential home for minors coming out of sex trafficking. And we're doing it under the umbrella of Falcon Children's Home. It's in an undisclosed location out of Cumberland County. And it is on that chart of the restoration phases, it's that third phase. So it's long term, it's a 2-year program for minors, and that's a flexible time frame. So it doesn't have to be just 2 years, but that's the program. And so, whereas Gate Beautiful is this initial crisis phase, on ramp type of services, Magnolia Hope is a long term restoration facility for minors.
And
So.
to also add a part of that is we'll be the only program in North Carolina that's actually focused in on minors who've been rescued from human trafficking. But not only will be the only one, but we'll be also state licensed, which is a big deal. So not only will we get private placement, but we'll actually get children, young ladies that are actually in the foster care system that are in that care. So it's a pretty big deal to be not only licensed, but also be the only one. And it's a huge need in North Carolina that many people don't realize. So.
Because right now, when girls are coming into the welfare system and they've been trafficked, they're being put in normal foster homes. And so those foster homes have a certain level of training for foster care, but they don't have specific human trafficking trauma training. And so the beauty of this program is that the staff are specifically trained to deal with that level of trauma. And our state desperately needs somewhere to put minor victims so that they're not just going back into a regular home trying to cope with that trauma in a house that's not totally equipped for it.
I'm coming.
Can you talk about the security team a little bit and what that looks like, I guess?
Well, we are still very much building the security team. But basically what it would look like, and I, again, would love for some experts to come alongside and help us build that training. But basically what it would look like is we'd have a referral come in, and our staff would reach out to a victim advocate and secure who's able to go. And then we would also secure a member of the security team. So the two of you would work out who would drive, like whose vehicle. The security team member would drive that vehicle. They would be the eyes, kind of just watching for anything going on. A lot of the time, you're going to meet law enforcement, so there's not going to be a huge threat. But that's to make your victim advocate feel like she doesn't have to be the eyes and she can be fully there for the victim. And then it also gives her agility to be able to make decisions and think without thinking about directions and things like that. And so that crisis response component is the biggest time that we need security. And so they would go along other times as well, depending on the situation, and then they would help transport to long-term programs. If it's a drivable distance, then we would send security for that as well. But basically, it's to be the eyes and ears and the driver. Does that make sense?
So no
Pretty
tactical
basic.
gear.
Is that a
No.
real question? Yeah, so we would not require that somebody carry, but we would talk about that at the training. We're up in the air on that a little bit.
I don't know if there's any other questions, but I want to add one more thing to Magnolia Hope, since we're kind of talking about the options for minors. They typically go to group homes, or they'll go to foster care, foster homes that are not really equipped or trained. But that is another component of what Magnolia Hope will be doing, as well as recruiting foster families to take these children into their home. So we want to kind of create a large pool of families who are willing to take the uniqueness of a child that has gone through that into their home via foster parent. So you'll get all the training, but it'll also be another component of human trafficking.
Yeah, so and that's because the residential program is going to be aimed at an age group of 11 to 18. So typically studies show that children don't do as well in group settings. They need to be in individual foster homes. And so the goal is to have our residential facility for teenagers that are coming out of trafficking, and then have specifically trained foster families that can care for the younger ones that are coming out of these situations.
So if you are interested in doing that, or you know other people who are interested in wanting to be a foster family, specifically with the uniqueness of human trafficking, let us know about that as well. So.
Cool. Any more questions?
About the number of children that you're talking about that will be.
So Magnolia Hope is right now is just one house. So the max capacity will be 6 girls. Yeah. So but the goal, once Magnolia Hope is kind of going and we're kind of rolling well, the goal is to multiply and open homes all over the state and then eventually the East Coast. So
Anybody else?
okay. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. Like Michael said, we're really honored that you came out to hear about it. We've got some cards, some information cards. You're welcome to take some to give people that you know, some business cards. And then please make sure to turn your form in so we've got your name and your email. And yeah, have a great Saturday. Thanks for coming.